All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. To say that it's been a rocky 3 years for quarterback Zach Wilson with the New York Jets might be the understatement of the decade. Wilson was taken second overall by the Jets in 2021, but his time as a starting quarterback for New York has been less than stellar. In 31 starts with the Jets, Wilson's record is only 11 and 20. Wilson has become the poster boy for frustration by a fan base that is tired of seeing the franchise start over at quarterback. Wilson's bad play during his first two seasons in the NFL led the Jets having to make that trade last offseason to acquire quarterback Aaron Rodgers from the Green Bay Packers. And we all know what happened there as Wilson was thrust into action after just three offensive plays this season. Now, some people have tried to give Wilson the benefit of the doubt as maybe the presence of Rodgers would help him improve or even live up to his potential. And we saw some of that last month when Wilson almost led the Jets to an upset win over the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. But after winning three consecutive starts, Wilson is right back to looking like the god awful quarterback that he was for his first two NFL seasons with the Jets. And after yesterday's calamity with the Buffalo Bills, Jets head coach Robert Saleh really had no choice, and he's seen enough as he has benched Wilson in favor of Tim Boyle. Now, this is not the first time that Saleh has benched Wilson. As you remember, he sat him down last year in favor of Mike White. And at the end of the day, you can put lipstick on a pig all that you want, but it's still a pig. And Zach Wilson is not a starting quarterback in the NFL. And this is something I've been saying since last year. The Jets bid against themselves in drafting Wilson so high back in 2021, especially since he was the only quarterback that they worked out in a weak quarterback class behind the first overall pick, Trevor Lawrence, who went to Jacksonville. Now, nobody expected the Jets to have to go back to Zach Wilson this season. And even if the Jets did have to use Zach Wilson, maybe, might have been for a game or two. We could if Aaron Rodgers needed to sit out, get some rest, or even if he got hurt. But nobody expected it to be to this point where you're relying on Zach Wilson to help you get to the postseason. The Jets tried to piece this together without Rodgers this season, and I think that shows a lot of character for them, and it also shows the talent level on this team because we've seen the Jets play defense. We knew that they could play defense before. Still got a solid defense. And you watched some of these games, and you have watched some of the games for the Jets this season, and you're just saying, wow, what if this team had Aaron Rodgers? Where would they be right now? They were legit Super Bowl contenders. Honestly, myself, pre the Aaron Rodgers injury, I had the Jets plugged in to win the whole thing because I figured, you know what? With that defense, with the playmaking ability of Aaron Rodgers, it was a great combination for the Jets not only to get to the postseason, but also do some damage there because when you have a good defense like the Jets do, it travels, especially in January. And now, unfortunately, it's coming apart at the seams for them. So you look at it right now, and the first question for me is in regards to Zach Wilson. How many more chances is he going to get with the Jets? And honestly, I think he's out of lives. There's no other way about it because it's one of those where you look at it last year, and I really thought that the Jets should have moved on from Zach Wilson then. It's one of those where I think the reason why the Jets decided to keep Zach Wilson, obviously, publicly, they're saying, well, you know what? We figured with Aaron Rodgers in the building, it would give him an opportunity to mentor the young quarterback. I totally get that. I totally understand that. But I think due to the fact that he was a first round pick, being that he was drafted so high in the first round, that gave the Jets pause to keep to hold on to him. Honestly, even last year, if you had just cut bait and just said, you know what, give us a fifth round pick or something like that. Hey, we'll move on. The San Francisco 49ers did it with Trey Lance. I mean, clearly, Trey Lance didn't work out for them, and the Niners traded up in that same draft to get Trey Lance. They traded him to the Dallas Cowboys for a mid round pick just prior to the start of the season. But nonetheless, if you're the Jets, I really think that they should have cut bait. Obviously, nobody could have foreseen the injury to Aaron Rodgers, but maybe you just have another veteran quarterback or another quarterback period backing up Aaron Rodgers that you bring in, not necessarily Zach Wilson. We've seen the Zach Wilson show, and it's one of those where for anybody to expect to go out there and think that the results long term are going to be different for Zach Wilson with the Jets, it's like reshuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic. We knew and we know what Zach Wilson is. He's not going to have some wonder drug that he's going to immediately show a 180 and become a different quarterback. I mean, let's be realistic. The three consecutive starts that he won in a row, he got he won against a bad Denver team on the road. Denver at that time was not playing well, especially offensively, and the Jets defense bailed him out. You go back to the following week when the Jets upset the Philadelphia Eagles at home. Zach Wilson again was not really playing good. He just had to make a couple of plays as it was the Jets defense that bailed him out. And then you go back to the win against the Giants, which was the Jets' last win. That was a scenario where you're like, hey, you know, the Jets had to struggle, fight, scrap, and claw in overtime to beat a Giants team that was out there on a third string quarterback, an undrafted rookie that was making his first start. And they were basically playing a single wing. And the Jets still had to go to overtime to beat that team. So those are the three wins that he has as a starter this season. Obviously, he came in off the bench, to help the Jets beat the Buffalo Bills in Week 1 on Monday night when Aaron Rodgers got hurt. But ever since then, he's only thrown one touchdown pass in his last three games. Uh, Honestly, the best quarterback yesterday for the Jets, you can make the case that it was their punter. When the Jets made that fake punt, which set up their only touchdown score of the contest. But Zach Wilson had his chances against the Raiders last week on Sunday night. Didn't look well. The week before against the Chargers on Monday Night Football didn't look good either. And honestly, if you're the Jets, you really had no choice but to make this decision right now. TFX, what's going on? How are you doing? You're saying you think Rodgers will play this season. I think he might because he's worked so hard to come back. He wants to play, not wait another 10 months to play. Giants gifted them that win. That was hilarious. Listen, honestly, I'll tell you like this. I'll answer that second question real quick. The Giants did gift them that win. I think, and I didn't talk about this on this platform, but that Giants Jets game set NFL football back about 30 or 40 years. That reminded me of my high school days when we just ran option football all day long out there. And it was something where, the Jets weren't that much better that afternoon in the conditions at the Meadowlands, but it was just like I said during that game. I even tweeted it. Somebody was going to win that game by accident, and sure enough, the New York Jets did. To answer that first part, you think Aaron Rodgers will play this season? He better not, because it's one of those where you're asking a 39-year-old man to come back from an Achilles injury that was just suffered in September. And I'll say this: you have a scenario where an Achilles injury is a long-term injury, and even let's just say, sake of argument, Rodgers is healthy to go week 1 of 2024. It's still going to take a year for him to really get his body back. Okay. And, Aaron Rodgers right now might be rehabbing, might be doing some light jogging, maybe, but doing light jogging, if he is doing that much right now, and asking him to go back there and plant on that foot and be able to cut and maneuver laterally against big, fast defenders in the NFL, that is a hard ask. And for me, I always think back to the 1997 NFL season when Warren Sapp had that horse collar tackle on Jerry Rice, which was legal at the time. Okay. And Jerry Rice tore his ACL. And Jerry Rice, being the super athlete, super dedicated athlete that he was during his illustrious career, Rice rehabbed and attempted to come back that season. and he re-injured the knee on Monday Night Football in his first game back against the Denver Broncos, and his season was officially over at that point. I think at this point, you have to save Aaron Rodgers from himself. I don't see how any doctor, how any medical person could clear him, and we're not even talking about the fact that the Jets have a bad offensive line, and we just saw Mekhi Becton get injured again yesterday. So I think it would be a recipe for disaster. It's one of those, cut your losses if you're the Jets. Just suck it up. It's been a Herculean effort for them to be 4-7 at this point. And I talked about this with a good friend of mine a couple of months ago when the injury happened. The Jets basically were going to have to go out there and play buck ball, like how the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did it, when Tony Dungy was the head coach and they had that stellar defense with Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks and John Lynch and others, where you had to go out there and consistently try to win games 17-13. And the Jets defense has done their part, but you can only win especially in the current NFL. You can only win so many games 17-13 or 17-16. Where you basically have to go out there and pitch a shutout defensively every week. And that's what they did against the Eagles. They had the turnovers, scooping scores, fumbles and interceptions, to put the Jets offense, in scoring situations right off the bat. You can't keep doing that every single week and expect to win. You've got to have a guy back there at the quarterback position that you can say, hey, you know what? We can go out and win with this guy. And they don't have that. Zach Wilson has never been that guy. And I'm not saying that he ever will be, that he won't be, at least in the NFL. But, I said from last year, the Jets needed to cut bait. I think Zach Wilson needed, a change of scenery. I think, it was a stark contrast for him from coming from Utah, BYU, to New York City, and of course, the New York media, can swallow a young athlete up, regardless of the sport. And just like I said last year, and I will say it right now, the Jets did not do Zach Wilson any favors when they first brought him into the league and made him a starter right away. You need sometimes to have that veteran quarterback to start maybe like the first 6 or 7 games to give that youngster an opportunity to see it from the sidelines. But Zach Wilson, to me, even with all of that said, and I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt there, he just has never had the it factor. And the Jets saw Zach Wilson work out at his pro day at BYU on an indoor field, and it's just you and your wide receivers out there, and you're in shorts and t-shirts, and you're basically just running your favorite plays. Of course, you're going to look good. Everybody's supposed to look good at their pro day. That's why it's your pro day. And the Jets were enamored on that. They didn't work out any other quarterbacks that year. Granted, once you got past Trevor Lawrence in that draft, things have not looked good. I mean, you look. I mentioned Trey Lance. He's now with the Dallas Cowboys. Mac Jones looks like he's on his last starts with the New England Patriots. The Patriots haven't done him any favors either. That's a whole nother story for another day. But nonetheless, in regards to Zach Wilson, I've been, a proponent of it for a very long time, that this young man simply needs to have a different change of scenery, because any success that he's going to have in the National Football League, it's not going to come with the New York Jets. He needs to be in a situation with an Andy Reid, in Kansas City, where he can be a backup and learn the game, or out in LA with the Rams with the Sean McVay. We saw what Sean McVay did very briefly when he worked with Baker Mayfield last year. He needs to be in an environment like that. He needs to be someplace where he has a coach or a guru, if you will, offensively, that knows how to work with and develop quarterbacks. He's not going to get that with the Jets. You're saying, do you think Rodgers needed to approve the benching of Wilson? I don't think that he really needed to approve it, but for me, I feel that Robert Sala, attempted to give this kid every opportunity to try to figure it out this season. And I totally understand that. I mean, you figure this was Robert Sala's first draft pick a couple of years ago with the Jets. And it's a guy that you put your stamp on, if you will, as a head coach. Obviously, it wasn't working out, which is why they had to go out there and make the move to get Aaron Rodgers last off season. But you still had to go out there and give him every opportunity. But even with that said, let's say you benched uh, Zach Wilson 3 or 4 weeks ago. Who are you going to go to? That's the whole thing because nobody really goes into a season saying, hey, we're going to go back to, our backup quarterback and hopefully he's going to, have a miracle season, and lead us to the promised land. Nobody really, game plans for that. And again, it's not that just Zach Wilson had been benched in the past. Zach Wilson had been made the third string quarterback. This team doesn't believe in him. And they didn't believe in him last year. And you can bring Aaron Rodgers into the building all you want. You can have him coach up Zach Wilson all you want. Zach Wilson's not a leader. And those guys are not going to go to bat for Zach Wilson like they would have for an Aaron Rodgers. And even last year when Mike White was with the Jets, Mike White was one of the guys. Zach Wilson isn't one of the guys. And if you're not one of the guys, they're gonna tune you out. So I mean, I look at it right now, just like I said last year, Zach Wilson needs a change of scenery. And, for me, you look at Robert Sala. Obviously things changed for him this season with the Rodgers injury. Things changed for this whole team period. You go back to week number one. I said it then. I have never heard MetLife sound like it did at that point. And the Jets and Giants have played there for years now. And that building even hosted a Super Bowl. It was not as loud as it was at the beginning of that game. And then, of course, you could just hear a pin drop when Aaron Rodgers went down as it just sucked the life out of that team. So I think the Jets at this point, they're just trying to get to the finish line. Robert Sala really didn't have a choice at this point. Maybe it came from higher above. I'm not sure. But you look at it like this: the Jets got a Friday home game this week against the Miami Dolphins. They could not afford to have Zach Wilson go out there in front of that crowd and continue to play as bad as he has been. Robert Saleh could not afford to have Zach Wilson go out there and continue to play as bad as he has been for the sake of his team. The Jets got three straight home games. They got Miami this week, Atlanta the following week, and then Houston the week after that. And the thing is like playing bad is one thing, but playing bad in front of the home crowd is even worse because you're going to have more eyes on you. You're going to have more media focus on you. And the worse that Zach Wilson plays, it's going to continue to pile on him and the Jets. So at the end of the day, the Jets' brain trust, I don't know if somebody was in the ear of Robert Saleh or not, but the move just had to be made. I think at this point, the Jets are done. These last 2 weeks were games that they needed to win because you look at the depth of the AFC, you might have a 10-win team sit home this year for the postseason. That's how deep that a conference is. So those are two games that the Jets definitely needed to win. They're done. They have to start their refocus, if you want to call it that, for 2024 and how they're going to get better. Clearly, um, they're not they're not gonna have their second round pick. Of course, it could have translated to a first round pick depending on the amount of plays that Aaron Rodgers, played this year for the Jets. Obviously, that didn't work out. I think he had to play 75% of the plays. Clearly, that's not going to work out. But or the offensive snaps rather. But nonetheless, you still got your first round pick this year. Obviously, your focus has to be the offensive line because you've got to protect Aaron Rodgers going forward. He's going to be the quarterback for the Jets next season. And again, I think the Jets just need to cut bait with Zach Wilson. Somebody else needs to be the backup quarterback for the Jets. And again, we have a situation where Zach Wilson wasn't just benched; he is now the third string quarterback. So that just lets where he is. And of course, that happened last year as well. And I thought at that point that he was done, and the Jets decided to bring him back. And it's like, you know, it's insanity when you keep trying to do the same thing and expect different results. And that's basically what the New York Jets have done with this young man. Zach Wilson has never been the guy for the New York Jets, and he never will be. Okay, maybe he can try to salvage his career in another NFL city, but it ain't coming in the New York, New Jersey area. I think it was inevitable for Robert Sala to get to this point. The fact that the Jets just basically got the brakes beaten off of them yesterday by the Buffalo Bills. it just made it inevitable for Robert Saleh to do what he had to do. But I think Zach Wilson's time with the Jets should be coming to an end. I'm not going to say that it is because I said that last year and the Jets went out there and decided to keep him. Why? I don't know. But nonetheless, the Jets cannot afford to have Zach Wilson continue to play like this and go out there and tell people that we're trying to win games. It's just not happening. So maybe this is it for Zach Wilson with the Jets at least, and maybe he can hitch on with another NFL team. And for the Jets, like I said, you're going back to Aaron Rodgers next year, but somebody else has to be the backup quarterback, for this adverse situation. The Jets tried, Robert Saleh tried, but at the end of the day, Zach Wilson simply ain't the quarterback for the Jets. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day. And very quickly before I go, TFX, as always, I got to give you a shout out, got to show you some love, and I definitely always appreciate the support. So once again, I'm William Martin signing off, saying thanks and take care. And thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.